Hey guys, welcome back to part 2 of my exclusive games for the original Xbox. Let's take a look. Alright, let's start this off with a really awesome game called Steel Battalion that only came out on the original Xbox. What makes this game special is that it attempts to be a realistic mech simulator, but what makes it completely over the top and awesome to collect for is that they released this massive controller that only works with this game. It's got pedals, it's got a bunch of different buttons, it's out of control, it's crazy. You're seeing it here on the screen. It comes in this massive box. It's definitely a really cool game, again, that only came out on the original Xbox. Here's a pretty cool title that came out on the Xbox called Shenmue II. Now, what's interesting about this game is that the Europeans and the Japanese got this for the Dreamcast, but in North America, we did not get this game. The only way you could get it was to get it on the original Xbox, as you see here. Very cool game. A lot of people love this title. They wish that they would make a third one. One thing you collectors may want to pay attention to is that this also came with a second DVD in the case. It's called Shenmue The Movie, and it's filled with a bunch of movie footage to catch you up in the story. So you don't always find this with that in there, and so just kind of want to point that out. Here's another exclusive to the original Xbox called Nightcaster. And this is a somewhat generic third-person action game published by Microsoft. I mean, there's not really much to say about this other than it got a sequel called Nightcaster 2 Equinox that is also on the Xbox, but honestly, it got even worse reviews than this game. So it's not like it's a terrible game, but you know, I don't know, it's not great either. Sega GT 2002 is a somewhat realistic racing game that came out on the Xbox. You know, Sega was really showing total support for the original Xbox. It's actually pretty cool. What's cool about this is that it's often sold as a double pack with JetSet Radio Future, and that is a game I absolutely love. This is a really interesting kind of extreme sports game where you're in the future, you're doing a bunch of tricks, you're grinding. Awesome music. I mean, as a matter of fact, the soundtrack for this game is just really fantastic. Again, you can only get this on the original Xbox. Greg Hastings Tournament Paintball. Now, what's interesting about this game is that it's a surprisingly fun first-person shooter that often landed in the top 20 games online when it was originally released. I mean, there was a bunch of people playing this game on Xbox Live. This game's also considered surprisingly realistic, especially if you're into paintball. And you know, even if you're not, you can have a ton of fun with this game. Here is Kung Fu Chaos. Now this is a 3D fighting and party game where you control characters in the making of this really cheesy Kung Fu movie. Now, this is not considered like a great game, but it's pretty chaotic as the name would suggest, and it's got a good sense of humor. Plus the game is short, so it definitely doesn't overstay its welcome. I originally covered Jager on a Hidden Gems video previously. This is a combat flight sim that came out for the Xbox, but then was eventually ported to Windows. But you don't really hear about it very often. Part of the reason why most people haven't heard of this in North America is because this was originally a European-only release, and then it took Microsoft another 2 years to bring it to North America, which is a real shame because the game is actually pretty good. As a matter of fact, fans of Wing Commander should definitely take a look at this game. Here is Gunvalkyrie. Now this is a third-person shooter by Sega that was originally designed for the Dreamcast, but eventually got canceled for that system, and then was brought over to the Xbox. Originally, this was going to be a light gun and controller game on the Dreamcast, but thankfully they simplified it when they brought it over to the Xbox. Still, the controls are a bit tricky, you know, they're not great, but this is a really fun game and has a huge cult following. Ah yes, a bowling game. You know, not really much to say about a bowling game. I mean, this is an okay bowling game, and I kind of like bowling games. I'll be honest with you. I mean, you know, they're all right. And this game is kind of all right. It's nothing special, other than it just came out on the original Xbox. Oh man, when Burnout 2 first came out, I played this game to death on the PlayStation 2. I absolutely love this game. This is where they got crash mode just perfect. Well, imagine my surprise when I learned that there is a developer's cut that came out on the original Xbox, and it has some Xbox exclusive extra crash levels. This is pretty cool and a must for Burnout 2 fans. Hunter, the Reckoning Redeemer is the third game in this series. Now this game is based on a gothic fantasy pen and paper RPG, but this third one only came out on the Xbox. There is a new leveling up system in this third game, which is a welcome addition to fans of this series. Honestly, this is a pretty nice looking beat 'em up that is surprisingly fun to play. Bruce Lee, Quest of the Dragon. Now I'm laughing because this is a beat 'em up starring the amazing Bruce Lee. I love Bruce Lee. I love those old 70s movies, man. He was so badass. Well, sadly, this game is not really fitting of someone who is as awesome as Bruce Lee. This is a fairly generic, boring, and frankly lame game. I mean, it feels like a budget title and really should just be avoided by everyone except maybe if you're a hardcore Bruce Lee fan. He definitely deserved better. Here is an Xbox exclusive Star Wars game, you're saying? What? Yep. Too bad it's not a great one. So, you play as Obi-Wan, as the title suggests. Now, this game takes place about 2 weeks prior to the events of Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Now, originally this was going to be a sequel to Jedi Outcast, which is that's actually a decent Star Wars game. But sadly, this game's got it's got okay graphics and gameplay and unfortunately just doesn't do much that's new. This is a very generic, forgettable Star Wars game. Fuzion Frenzy is a launch title that includes 45 minigames with support up to 4 different players. This isn't an amazing game, but if you were an early adopter of the original Xbox when it came out, well, this was a fun couch co-op party game. Today, everybody with an Xbox 360 or an Xbox One, they all know about the Forza series, but the original started out right here. This was considered to be a serious attempt to bring that Gran Turismo experience to the Xbox, and by almost all accounts, it completely succeeded. The game includes over 230 cars in 6 performance classes, as well as realistic model damage to those cars, which is both cosmetic as well as affecting performance. Now, this was really cool stuff and certainly gave Xbox owners a racing game to be proud of. Tecmo Classic Arcade is a collection of Tecmo arcade games, as you would expect, but this only came out on the Xbox for some reason. Typically these collections will come out on the Xbox, the PlayStation 2, the GameCube, everything basically, but for whatever reason, this only came out on the system. So it's kind of collectible, it's kind of interesting. It's not really that great of a collection, to be honest. I mean, it only has 11 games in it, and it's kind of missing some major ones that people would expect. Crimson Skies High Road to Revenge. Now, this is a sequel to a much-loved PC game, but it was completely designed from the ground up for Xbox only. This game takes place in an alternate 1930s where you play as a leader of a pirate gang that flies and shoots its way through, frankly, a super fun campaign mode. As a matter of fact, my buddy Drunken Master Paul has played this game and also the original a bunch of times. As a matter of fact, they're some of his favorite games of all time. Now, this game got excellent reviews when it first came out, and like I said, it's still a ton of fun to play, even today. Yes, you can't do a video about exclusive Xbox games without mentioning Bloodwake. This was a launch title for the original Xbox, and it's a fun naval combat game. It's almost like Twisted Metal on water. This game features a ton of boats to unlock, as well as hidden gameplay modes. Many people consider this to be one of the best games on the original Xbox, and thankfully you can find it for really cheap. Here's kind of an oddity. Now, Crazy Taxi 3 High Roller didn't come out on any other console, although it did come out on the PC, but I just kind of want to include it here because, You know, the Crazy Taxi series is really popular. This is a fantastic version of it. Again, you can only get it on the original Xbox, so if you find a copy, you should definitely snag it. And then finally, here's a game that I think most people would probably pass over, and that is called Toxic Grind. This is a futuristic BMX stunt game similar to the Tony Hawk Pro Skater series that is surprisingly great. And just like in Tony Hawk, you execute tricks, you'll do grinds, wall rides that earn points, as well as you collect letters that spell out different words. Now, I don't think this sold very well, but fans of Tony Hawk should definitely check this game out. All right, and that is part 2 of exclusive games for the original Xbox. And I have to say, I love collecting for this console because, quite honestly, for the most part, the games are really good and they're relatively cheap. I mean, very few people are out there collecting for it, which is good for me. The other thing I want to point out is that, you know, I didn't really cover, obviously, any third-party games that came out on other systems, but one thing to keep in mind, if you're interested in collecting for the original Xbox, is that all of those third-party games are usually great on this console. So, again, it's fantastic to collect for. I have a huge library, and I love going back to it time and time again. As always, I want to thank you for watching my channel, and thanks very much for subscribing. Take care.
Hey, it's Mrs. Metal Jesus here. If you want to see even more videos, go to MetalJesusRocks.com. It's got his entire catalog, swag, Facebook, and Twitter links. Plus, we got live footage of our band playing, including me on drums. So check it out, bitches.